Roll for Crit is made possible thanks to the support of viewers like you and our patrons on our Patreon page.
You can become a patron for just $1 a month at patreon.com/rollforcrit.
The Pandemic series is in some hot water, and not because we're in the middle of a real pandemic. Recently, they announced their newest and last entry for the Pandemic Legacy series, Pandemic Legacy Season 0. Instead of being the final chapter, it is a prequel to the previous two, taking place during the Cold War, when you will be playing as CIA agents fighting against the USSR. Now, some people have felt like it is a little insensitive for you to be taking out Russian people, the spies, with the action which is neutralize agents. It's not really stopping influence. It seems to be directly interacting with the people. Because of this, it's actually been review bombed on BoardGameGeek, where currently on BoardGameGeek it's at a 6, even though the game's not out as of this recording. And also, a lot of people now are discussing, is this fair to make a game about such an actual live country instead of maybe making up one, or maybe questionably a time period where people wouldn't be alive if they lived through that event. So It's very interesting. I've never heard of a board game being review bombed.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing that's certainly become very popular. They've been trying to stop it in video games and the movie industry. And I think first and foremost, everyone can agree that, well, maybe not, but I'm going to say it. Review bombing, just in general, is kind of a dumb concept, as is, just giving a game a 10 before it comes out. I don't know why BoardGameGeek allows you to rate a game before it comes out. I guess probably just, the system's been in place so long, they never thought before it would really matter that much.
I think it's pretty international. So a lot of it's been released in America, but hasn't been released maybe in the UK or something, and they don't want to make a system we've checked your IP address and you shouldn't be rating this yet.
Yeah, so that's one thing. But that aside, the content of this discussion took me aback because it's not something I ever really would have considered. Certainly there have been board games where we have had just discussions about cultural issues and things that could be seen as insensitive. A lot of games about colonialism, colonizing indigenous people's lands, things like that has been an issue for a while in the history of board games. This strikes me as a little bit of a different thing. I can't say that I'm trying to be open-minded and respectful of people who find the theme insulting. To me, it is very much, it's not as if you are taking out specifically quote-unquote Russians. It's more like factions of people from a certain period of time. It's like the CIA and the Soviet Union, or the KGB, which to me is different from actually being America versus Russia, although we do have games that also do that.
I do want to point out that we are Americans, so we're going to view this from American gaze, which I actually think is interesting because I know a lot of people bring up fairly that we tend to like to put Russians in the slot of villains, especially though I think a lot of examples pull from the 80s. 007, Wolverines, I forget the name, Red Dawn, I think it's called.
Oh, yeah.
Any of the Call of Duty or Modern Warfare games.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm somebody who that's kind of come back up a little bit recently for various reasons in our world right now. America and Russia are kind of a thing these days, and I'm not someone who, just personally, I don't feel like, for example, communism or socialism or Russians, I shouldn't have to say that one, are inherently evil. And even sometimes I get, I'm not a huge fan of this sort of, we've almost seen this renaissance in movies of, like you said, Russians being the villains again. And it's sometimes that irks me, and there are certain ways that bleeds over into real life that I'm not crazy about. But in general, I feel like this game, Pandemic Legacy, it is very much in that tradition of the James Bond kind of thing. It's a pastiche, and to me, it's not crossing any boundaries to the point where I find anything in it offensive or not appropriate. But that's me. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I am a little curious because supposedly the company that would publish it in Russia is not going to produce it. So I'm curious whether they can see the entire game because like everyone's saying, which I'm almost certain they're going to do, even though it's so cliche. I almost would be happy them not to do. Of like, turns out the CIA is also bad. It's like keeping
There's like, you
everything
think
gray.
there'll be a twist like
Yeah,
halfway through or
yeah,
something.
like very.
Which I
predictable.
mean, is it even a twist? Aren't they?
Right. And I'm not saying the CIA actually
Yeah.
they did a lot of bad things, but for when I'm sure when it comes into board games and stuff, sometimes it's just like, oh my god, I'm so shocked. And another thing I guess for me I just found very curious. I don't know if you see about this, Jonathan. Not even in recent years. Like it's not like the U.S. is always the good guy. I've seen them villains plenty of times, and I mean, we're not always the good guys. Hell, I don't think we see ourselves as the good guys that often.
No, there's certainly nowadays less and less and less, but there's definitely a history of media that depicts the evils of the United States and the flaws in our systems. And I just think that this game, like I wouldn't even call myself a very patriotic person at all, but I playing this, I never once crossed my mind. I think it would be one thing if it were set in modern day or if it was pretending to be a historical record of something, but I feel like it so clearly makes its case as being not based on real events, like kind of in a real time period, but obviously there's other things going on that didn't actually happen. To me, it's just very far removed, and it's a very. It's not like this is a big recurring theme in board games, at least that we see all the time. In fact, it's kind of novel outside of like Twilight Struggle or something like that.
There are two things I'm curious on your thoughts related to that
Mm-hmm.
that came up in an argument with a friend. One, and this one's more from what I read with people. Some people apparently are saying like this actually happened and teaching it to be real history, in which I'm pretty sure no one actually made a real pandemic unless you think somehow this one was caused by it. In which case, I don't think a board game company is the one that's going to crack open this conspiracy. And if people do believe it, I don't think that's the board gamers' fault that if they make a board game mocking flat Earth and people are like, "See, the Earth's flat,"
So they think it's like propaganda.
Actually, that's what comes up a lot in the comments. A lot of them are like, "This is all propaganda."
Okay,
which is interesting. The other one is, and this one I think is a bit more interesting, that this is a cooperative game. The friend I had argued about is a big fan of Axis and Allies.
I mean, that's yeah.
Where someone controls not the Axis, which includes Nazis,
German
and then
soldiers.
said like, "How does that you feel though?" And he's like, "Well, it's not really. You're not doing usually the atrocities. You're just two armies, that happen to be fighting on Earth. You can sort of like, well, you're still dealing with these people. How do you deal with that? And is it different because in this you are all forced to play as the CIA agents? I know someone said they should have made a version where you can choose the USSR, which would have been very expensive, but would have been a cool idea when they did the two boxes that actually played differently. Especially if that twist came up. That would be. I mean, at least make that twist a lot cooler.
Maybe that's season 0.5. I don't know. I mean, it is a good point. I mean, there's a lot of war games where you play as different sides and sometimes literally just different countries quite often. And, it's a similar thing. And maybe there's differences because they are based on history. So you can kind of get a pass. Or like you said, because you can choose to play from both sides, it's different. But it is what it is. Like it's a cooperative game, and I don't expect them to go to extra lengths to recreate things in such a way so that just to make sure no one is ever offended by any little thing that might crop up. So I mean, I sound tired because this tires me out, and to me, I'm just like, why is this a discussion? Why is this an issue? Maybe it's on some level it's healthy to have it, but I really think there are even in the board game world, there are other games, themes, and subjects that are better worth discussing in this regard than this one. I don't think this merits all this hubbub.
I think it's worth maybe discussing something like this every now and then. Like, is it because I don't know. It's not even hypothetically. People who were alive during that time are alive now. Like, would this not be as bad if this was like World War I or the Revolutionary War?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I mean, they even released a pandemic game with the Romans, and you fight against, like, I believe you fight against
The Huns or
the
something.
Huns. Thank you. You know, is that offensive? Because I would say there are still descendants from there, not people who were alive during that time.
Yeah, there's a lot to chew on. There's a lot to chew on. I've chewed it. I don't want to chew it anymore. But I'm sure that people maybe watching this video would like to do more chewing, and you can let us know if you think this is worth discussing, if you found it insensitive, or if you think it's overblown, or I mean, there's more nuance perhaps to it than that.
Or maybe I think would be not as a hot topic, could be hotter. Is review bombing a good thing?
Do you love review bombing? Are you still mad that Last Jedi has a positive score on Rotten Tomatoes? Talk to us in the comment section down below, and we'll just keep on trucking until Pandemic Legacy Season 0 comes out. I would predict this. I mean, it sounds like there's some issues maybe overseas, but I have serious doubts that this will really affect the game's production or theme or marketing in any way.
Well, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure that the companies or the countries that this would sell a lot of games in would fall on the Allied side. So that's that opens up another can of worms. Is that
Roll
fair?
for Crit, we're staying in the neutral zone for now.
Oh, are we Swiss?
Yeah. Hey, well, let's be careful. Let's leave the Swiss out of it. Let us know what you think. Until then, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this has been a real heated episode of Roll for Crit.
Not a cold one.
We would love it if you liked and subscribed to this channel and supported us on Patreon as well.
For legal reasons, we've got to disclose we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with more awesome content.